Welcome to Monday's Mental Mistakes. This week we're looking at the framing effect. The framing effect is the impact that the way a situation is described has on how we respond. That is, describing a situation in different but equivalent ways can lead us to make different decisions. The framing effect makes us more likely to be swayed by the unimportant details of the presentation. At the same time, we are unlikely to base our decisions purely on the facts of the situation. Here's a simple example. Suppose that the CDC develops a treatment for Ebola, but it involves exposing patients to a less harmful but still live form of the virus. A small town in the US has an outbreak and the 600 residents are quarantined and a treatment plan needs to be chosen. There are two possible ways the treatment can be administered. Treatment option A involves using the treatment as is, which will result in saving the lives of 200 of the 600 townsfolk. Treatment option B is to delay administration while more research is done. This has a 33% chance of saving the lives of all 600 of the townsfolk and a 66% chance of saving no one. Which option would you choose? You implement your chosen option, but unfortunately the Ebola virus evolves. The CDC goes to work on a new treatment, and before long, another small town in the US has an outbreak, and another 600 people are at risk. Again, you have two possible ways that the new treatment can be administered. Treatment option A again involves using the new treatment as is, which will result in 400 deaths of the 600 townsfolk. Treatment option B is again to delay administration while more research is done. This has a 33% chance of no one dying, and a 66% chance of all 600 townsfolk dying. Which option would you choose? If you chose different options for the two scenarios, then congratulations. You suffer from the framing effect, like the rest of us. Both situations are actually the same. In either case, it's a choice between a guaranteed 200 survivors and 400 dead, versus a 33% chance of 600 survivors, none dead, and a 66% chance of no survivors, 600 dead. The only difference is in the way that the scenarios were described. Research has shown that people are more likely to prefer the certainty of option A in the first scenario, as it is framed as saving lives. However, people are more likely to prefer the gamble of option B in the second scenario, when it is framed as avoiding deaths. This preference for gambling to avoid losses is exploited in this example by framing two equivalent scenarios differently. This is the framing effect. The principal way to counter the framing effect is to look for alternative framings. A deeper understanding of the situation will help to extract the information from the particular way it was framed, but even without this, it can be helpful to frame the information in a different way. For example, a diet product might be advertised as 96% fat-free, which sounds good. But the opposite framing would be to consider it as 4% fat, which might not sound as great. Similarly, political incumbents will often highlight the number of jobs they've created while in office. But it is just as important to look at the unemployment rate and the number of people who are out of work. Thinking about the opposite framing for a piece of information helps to prevent getting stuck in one way of looking at it. The framing effect is a very broad cognitive bias, with specific examples of it being studied in their own right. Here I want to focus only on the framing of something as a loss or a gain. As highlighted in the example before, there is a well-documented bias to value losses more heavily than equivalent gains. That is, losses of the same amount are felt worse than gains. The framing effect can take advantage of this bias by simply describing a neutral situation as either a gain or a loss, depending on which option is preferred. For example, a university had an admissions policy that allowed for applications during a certain time period at one fee and later applications at a higher fee. When this was advertised as a discount for early applications, 63% of people put their applications in early to pay the lower fee. However, when this was changed and instead it was advertised as a penalty for late applications, 97% of people put their applications in early. In either case, the monetary amounts were the same, but people were much more motivated to avoid a perceived penalty than to gain a perceived reward. This is because in both cases the monetary value was the same, but our bias makes perceived losses count more heavily. Another example of the framing effect is with loyalty cards. Many cafes in my local area have loyalty cards, where after having purchased a number of coffees, usually 10, you receive a free one. This is framed as buying 10 and getting your 11th one free. An alternative framing of this is by committing to purchase 11 cups of coffee, you get a 9% discount. Of the people who like the idea of getting a free coffee, far fewer would be attracted to the idea of a flat 9% discount. These situations aren't exactly the same, but loyalty programs are rarely framed in terms of the equivalent discount rate, as this is usually far less appealing. This is partly because having the card encourages you to feel like you already have the free item, and so not continuing to shop at the same store is akin to losing your free thing. Framing it as a discount makes it sound more like something you gain by participating, which is less compelling. In conclusion, the framing effect is the tendency to change your decisions based on how the information is presented, particularly either as a loss or a gain. Until next week, may your mental mistakes be minor.